Gentlemen, we are live and broadcasting worldwide today. There are no guests. We're going to have open phones and cover masses of news. We may have on the gun shop owner, tattoo parlor owner, and others that were right in the middle of the shops being looted and burned, but no one burned them down because they stood out front their shops, black, white owners, you name it, with AR-15s. And shotguns, just like the Korean shopkeepers back in the LA riots. And so the folks rioting there basically in a suburb of St. Louis were unable to rob that area. Again, there's two different issues going on here. Did the police shoot a man with his hands up? Maybe. Don't forget Oscar Grant and other stories where they claimed he had assaulted the officers and he had done no such thing and was in handcuffs on the ground, and the cop pulled the gun out, cold-bloodedly shot him right in the back, and then was later convicted and only served 1.5 years in prison. The bullet went through his back, hit the concrete, bounced back up, and went into his chest for a second time, ricocheting back up into his body. So I understand why people get upset by this. I'm concerned about this, the militarization of police, where they're basically trained the public are terrorists in general. And that does cause a lot of excessive force to be used. There are a lot of mentally ill people that obviously gravitate towards sadistic activities and want the uniform and want the power. That's a historic problem. And more police departments, especially in big cities, are not trying to keep those people out. And so that's why we're seeing things like this intensify. It's basically a power grab like we saw back a few years ago with the Boston bombing. It was a citizen that caught the patsy sleeping in the boat outside the cordon area where one half of Boston was searched, and black people, white people, you name it, that had no resemblance to the Zarnev brother they were looking for, were being pulled out of their houses, pulled out of their cars at gunpoint in a giant police state orgy power grab. And it's time for the system to stop denying that we're moving into an authoritarian, totalitarian model. They denied the NSA was spying. Now it's all admitted. They denied so many other things. They've denied that they were adding things to vaccines, part of Trojan horse secret programs. They've been caught over and over again. They said that smart meters wouldn't track what you did and wouldn't control the temperature in your house. Now they admit they do. This is part of a revolution by criminal elements in government and major corporations that interface with it to dominate and control society and manage the population like we're a bunch of cattle, a.k.a. Soylent Green. And this whole broadcast is simply about getting people to think outside of the box and to be made aware of that. So that is our main mission. So we're going to get into the situation unfolding in St. Louis and surrounding areas, because it's a microcosm of what's going to unfold on a wider scale in this country. We're going to get into kill switch smartphone bill passes in California. We're going to break down the knockout game where blacks physically attack white people. You don't see whites out burning down black neighborhoods because of that. We're going to look at how MSNBC and others have promoted this thug, racist culture. And then we're also going to look at Gardasil shots killing more people. Stay with us. Thinking about the folks that have been rioting in Ferguson and in areas of South St. Louis, who've been burning down shops and businesses and grocery stores and mini marts and homes. And I realized that they're only following the example of the U.S. federal government. Because if a police officer did shoot a 18-year-old black man in cold blood with his hands up, as witnesses say, which certainly has happened before and is happening with more frequency because of instinctive shooting training mainly, if that is the case, it makes total sense. Because if the police kill someone who's innocent, you don't go attack the police station. You don't go try to burn down the police station or burn down police cars or attack police. By the way, I'm not endorsing that. I'm just saying hypothetically. No, no, no. You burn up your own neighborhood and any shops that are white-owned. That will certainly show them. And how are they taking their cue from the federal government? Actually, from George Walker Bush. Well, it's just like supposedly 15 of the 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia, but we attacked their archenemy, Iraq, and then overthrew the government and have armed now Saudi Arabian-backed al-Qaeda Wahhabist from Saudi Arabia to take it over. So I guess, actually, they're not taking a total cue from the federal government where Saudi Arabia attacks us, so we attack Saudi Arabia's enemy and blame them for it. This is where the cops reportedly shoot an innocent person, and then the people burn down part of their own neighborhood. Because to actually mimic our government, the blacks would protest a fellow black person being killed in cold blood by shooting a bunch of innocent blacks. Because that's kind of what happened with 9/11. If you believe the official story, Saudi Arabia was involved. Clearly, they were at some level. And so you attack the country that was not involved. So actually, that's not a fair analogy, is it? Because the blacks in St. Louis and in Ferguson would have to just randomly kill black people. And they'd have to kill about 1,500,000. Because I keep using the million number. That was from the sanctions and the first year of the war. From 1990 to 2007, it was over 1 million, according to the British Medical Journal that did the analysis. The Lancet and others did breakdowns. It's about 1.5 million now. So actually, you know, you'd have to kill, I guess, every black person in St. Louis to make it something comparable. Kill up 50, 100,000 black people. They'd have to kill 50, 100,000 of their own people to actually be as cockamamie and crazy and off the wall as the propaganda that we accept in this country. And if you're having trouble wrapping your mind around that gibberish that I just spent 4 minutes putting out, hey, don't blame me. I'm putting out the twisted, backwards, upside down, bizarro world, satanic logic of the globalist. Of course, there's really no logic at all except destabilization and power grabbing. That's what's happening. Because our government for 4 years, basically, has been, I keep saying 3 years, it's about 4 years now, has been funding al-Qaeda rebels in Libya and in Egypt and in Iraq and in Syria to take over areas, build a command base to then threaten the West with all the Stinger missiles they've got so they can then set up police states in the Western world to counter the people that publicly work for them. And again, where's the logic of that? The federal government, the CIA, publicly funded al-Qaeda to go in and take over Libya. They did the same thing in a whole bunch of other countries. And now they're acting like they don't know why ISIS is running wild, trying to take over Kurdish areas where they're not supposed to be. See, they're painting outside the lines. They're not painting by the numbers. So they've all got to be bombed to go back into the areas where they're allowed to be, forming their new state out of western Iraq into eastern Syria. And I know I talk a lot about this because it's an unfolding tragedy and it's a war crime because it's bigger than just what's happening with al-Qaeda. It's an illustration of everything the globalists do, where they create